So you could start.
Okay. Good day, everyone. My name is Mariam Aramidia Degite. I'm a computer engineering student at Beykent University in Istanbul. And today I will be presenting the XE103 defense and the real-life application of the skills learned in this module as a cybersecurity analyst. In this presentation, I'll walk you through how fundamental Linux skills translate to real-world cybersecurity operations. And each lab in this presentation is aligned with an industry use case, which was analyzed through the STAR framework and connected to daily KPIs that reflect how professionals monitor and respond to threats in real-life operations. And in this presentation, my objectives are twofold. The first one is demonstrating how each lab translates to a real-world of cybersecurity operation, and the other one is to map each outcome to actual industry roles. Starting with the first lab, Linux command for system and network management. In this lab, I'll be analyzing the CyberWire January 2025 report, where unauthorized SSH logins were detected on production Linux servers. In this situation, we were tasked with identifying compromised account and unauthorized user creation. And to achieve this, we used the last command with grep to verify recent SSH login history, because the last command the last command reads through the WTNP file in the log folder that records successful login and logout event. And we use the cat command coupled with the tail command to review recent user additions and to detect any anomaly and to resolve them quickly. And the result was we were able to detect abnormal root login from unknown IP addresses, and the host was eventually quarantined. To ensure that the system stays secure over time, we established a daily KPI that measures the login that we establish the baseline frequency, login frequency that counts the number of SSH activity. And if this activity exceeds the baseline by 30%, it triggers an incident escalation. And this mirrors how a SOC analyst monitors anomalies, how a penetration tester understands authentication mechanism, and how an incident responder isolates compromised host. Moving on to the second lab, text manipulation. In this lab, we learned about tools like grep and awk, which are fundamental to log analysis. And we analyzed the CyberWire April 2025 brief, where multiple failed SSH logins was flagged by CM across production system. In given the situation, our task was to identify the source IP address of the brute force attempts, and to achieve this, we used the grep command to search inside the authentication log for entries with failed passwords, and we used WC to count the number of lines. And we use the cat command with grep awk sort unique to analyze the authentication file and extract the top 10, the top attacking IP addresses. And we're able to discover the top attacking IP addresses and block them using firewall rules and update failed to ban configurations. To operationalize this outcome, we compared failed login counts daily. And if the count exceeds the baseline, the specified baseline by 50% or greater, we log and escalate for investigation. And this lab closely aligns with SOC operations like monitoring and correlating SSH failures and penetration testing for understanding brute force patterns and incident response that involves blocking malicious hosts and tuning defense mechanism. Moving on to the third lab, the find command. The find command is an essential tool for penetration testers and auditors because it allows them to proactively locate files with overly permissive settings, which is a tool that attackers frequently exploit. And in this scenario, we'll be analyzing we analyzed the March 2025 alert where suspicious data was exposed, there was exposure of data due to misconfigured permissions. And our attack and to do this, we use the find command to search for files that have full permission. And this is often considered a red flag because files with full permission, essentially it's word writable, which means that anybody can modify them. We use grep with the IRN flag to search for configuration files with the credentials password, and were able to find a word writable configuration file in the XE directory. The permissions were eventually corrected and the credentials were rotated. And to operationalize this finding, we ran permission audits daily on critical directories and documented and remediated any word writable exposure within 24 hours. And the SOC analyst will review these findings alongside access log for signs of privilege misuse. An incident responder will verify and secure exposed credentials as part of post-incident cleanup. Moving on to the fourth lab, monitoring and securing network services. In this scenario, we explored the February 2025 brief, where elevated brute force attempts was observed on port 22. And our task in this scenario was to identify the source IP addresses and to also identify and verify which services were actively listening on the system. And to achieve this, we used the cat command with grep, org, sort, and unit to firstly identify the top attacking IP addresses, and next start with the TUL NP flag to review which services were actually, which ports, with the listening port and the associated process IDs. And we're able to detect unapproved service running on port 8080, and we determined the process was terminated and the firewall policy was updated. And the daily KPI was to compare daily active network ports with the specified baseline and flag and investigate any new or unknown services immediately. And this exercise reflects real-world practices where a penetration tester will identify exposed entry points and a SOC analyst to continuously monitor port activity. Moving on to the fifth lab, enforcing least privilege with permissions. In this lab, we discussed the May 2025 threat brief, where unauthorized users gained read access to the shadow file in the XE directory. And this is a critical security failure because the shadow file contains user account password hashes, and unauthorized users gaining access to it is a really serious security failure. And our task was to add in system file permissions and to enforce least privilege. And to achieve this, we use the change mode command to ensure that no one else except the root user has access to the shadow file. And we used user mode with the AG flag to create a security user that for safe security, to ensure safe privileged boundaries. And the result was that critical files were able to secure critical files, and the privilege escalation vector was mitigated. And the daily KPI for this scenario was to verify that permissions for the shadow file and sudoers file remain secure, and also to flag and investigate any unauthorized changes. A penetration tester is typical SOC analyst to track file integrity changes in real time, while an incident responder remediates permission misconfigurations during containment. In the sixth lab, we talked about bash scripting, because bash scripting is very important because it helps to help SOC analysts to move from reactive investigation to proactive near real-time detection. And in this lab, we discussed the June 25 recap, where security teams manual log reviews delayed brute force detection, and allowed, and the task was to automate the detection of SSH brute force attempts. And to achieve this, we created a script, a bash script, and named it brute detect.sh. And this file, running this script returns the top 10 IP addresses with failed SSH login attempts. And running this script with cron, scheduled running with cron, allowed us to detect the IP addresses if it exceeds a set threshold, like 10 unique IP addresses in 1 hour, and to alert and escalate to the incident response team if such a thing happens. A SOC analyst rely on this kind of automation to handle repetitive monitoring tasks, and an incident responder integrate automated alerts into response workflow for faster containment. in the seventh lab, we talked about the TR command. In TR command, because the TR command is invaluable for cleaning. This lab, analysts found it challenging to correlate lab due to found it hard to correlate logs due to inconsistent username formatting and redundant IP addresses in investigation labs. And so when we simulated this, our task was to standardize and to clean extracted forensic data. And to do this, to achieve this, we used the cat command with the tr command to standardize case. So in this situation, we use the tr command to convert all the lowercase letters to uppercase letters. This helps to standardize the case and ensure that this uniform case for all the usernames in the log. And we also use the cat command with org and sort and unique to ensure that we remove redundancy of duplicate IP addresses. And the result was we're able to get a clean data set that helped to significantly improve log correlation and also reduced passing error during analysis. The daily KPI that we measured for this was using TR and org daily to sanitize and normalize logs before this workflow is highly applicable in practice because the SOC analysts rely on normalized data for accurate threat correlation, and penetration testers need to understand how defenders process logs to avoid detection, and incident responders ensure data consistency across multi-system investigations. The key takeaway from this model included core, like thinking like an attacker and defending like a pro, and also applying the cyber Q chain because it helps to one step ahead by disrupting and we also learned about automating routine defenses where possible. And we also mapped the skills to real life roles like the SOC analyst who like monitors log, alert triage, and baseline deviation, as we've seen in the first and the second lab. But penetration tester roles like misconfiguration discovery, permission checking, vulnerability mapping, and define privilege escalation paths. And for an incident responder, forensic data analysis, log standardization, and recovery, as we've seen in the sixth and the seventh lab. At the end of the day, the daily KPI reminds us that a good defense is continuous. And at the end of every shift, we need to consolidate daily metrics and to confirm resolution. And if the anomalies persist, we activate the documented response plan and also confirm that all the incidents are resolved, the logs are updated, and documentation is also cyber. We are not just learning, we're learning how to defend the digital frontier, because the Linux lab helps us to essentially shows us that the labs are not isolated workflows. They are direct simulation of real world security workflows. So in conclusion, we've seen how the Linux fundamentals directly translate into real-world cybersecurity defense. And this labs reinforce that the mastery of Linux is not just technical, it's also operational, which is the backbone of every defensive workflow. And the Think Cyber hands-on approach also ensure that we did not just memorize it, we're also doing the real-world scenario.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Let's move to the question and answer session. Explain two ways to display the size of a file.
This usage and ls.
The first you said what DU? The first one was what?
Yes, disk usage. D by the name of the file I want to check.
The question again is explain two ways to display the size of a file.
Okay, so firstly, I can use DU-H. So if I want to check the file, the size of, let's say, hackers.txt file, this returns the size of the file. I can also use ls hyphen lh dot txt. Yeah, this also, it displays the size 141 kilobytes, but it also tells us about the permissions of the file, but also it returns the size of the file.
Explain the different flags -L, -W, -C in the WC command. Use a data to actually demonstrate them. -L, -W, -C in the WC command. Explain the difference.
Okay, so I have to use it with the cat command. So WC-L displays the number of lines in a file. So let's say I want if I want to know the number of lines in this file, I use WC-L, and it tells me the number of lines I have in this file. If I want to know the number of words in this file, I use -W, and WC-C tells me the number of characters in this file, the number of bytes in this file.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Let's move to the next question. How do you display system uptime? How do you display system uptime?
To display the system uptime, we use the uptime command because it tells us how long the system has been running and the number of user and the load average. So using the uptime command.
What output is shown when you use the command free-h? You just tell us what output, when you say free-h, what does it show you? What output do you see? That's supposed to be the fourth question.
Free-h, the memory usage of the system.
Okay, run
So
free-h.
should I run it?
Let me see free-h and see what it shows you.
It shows the available memory, the
Used
total,
and the free, the
used
shared,
and
and other
the
information. You didn't get that totally
free
right.
space.
Then the last part is how do you start, stop, or restart a service? To use that,
We use
demonstrate it
system
with a service.
CTL.
Demonstrate it with a CTF. Start, restart, stop, and restart a service.
So I can start SSH. SSH. And if I want to check the status of the SSH service now, it returns the status of the service. And if I stop it, stop. And I check the status now, it shows that it's been disabled. It's no longer running, it's inactive.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. That should be okay. All right, that's all. I think that's all for the session. You can start preparing for your Python class. So that's all from here. So you can exit the platform.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Are you still there? Okay. You can start.
Okay, so good afternoon to you. My name is Okene Daniel Otega. I graduated from Babcock University. I'm currently doing the Think cybersecurity. I'm in the TCN2508 cohorts. Right now, I'll be presenting my understanding based on all the labs and sessions in the Linux program or the Linux module of this course. So I'll be sharing my screen where I would start that. So give me a second. Let me start sharing my screen. Oh, I hope you can all hear me. So I'll be sharing my screen now. So once again, good afternoon to you all, and I'll begin my presentation. So throughout the course of the Linux training in the Linux program or module in this training, I've been able to master core essential Linux skills, not only in theory, but being able to apply it in a real world cyber defense scenario or incidents. The labs have been able to give me practical experience that I can directly apply to I directly apply or map to real world cybersecurity rules like SOC analysis, being able to monitor logs, whether it's system-wide logs, network logs or whatnot, being able to detect incidents, unusual patterns and whatnot, respond to it, being able to system enumeration, being able to map out devices, spot vulnerabilities and whatnot, incidents responder, being able to perform basic remediation of incidents and whatnot. So starting with the first lab, so in the first line, Linux command introduced us to, before I go into the case study, briefly, it was able to introduce us to be familiar with Linux, not as an operating system, not just as an operating system, but as a tool. We were being able to not only taught, but also able to practice the real world, real relevant commands, essentials to navigating Linux like ls, cd, mv, um, netstart and whatnot. So looking at my slides here, bringing it into a real world case study, we can see that in January 2025, there was an incident whereby defenders detected unauthorized SSH logins on their production servers. So multiple attempts were made at logging in with unfamiliar IP addresses, which is indicative of a potential credential stuffing attack, which is an attack whereby attackers take stolen logins from another source and try and feed them into the login fields of a different system, hoping that the users will use them. So, and the task the defender had was clear. They had to identify all these compromised accounts and unauthorized user creations and may have resulted from the attack. So the first thing you have to, from looking at my action here, you can see that they had to use the last command. The last command basically calls the system-wide the last command basically calls the WSMP file, which is in the var/log folder, which is essentially a system-wide file that keeps track of all the login attempts, whether from which account was trying to log in, from what IP address, at what time, for what duration the session lasts or whatnot. So the defender's goal was to determine these IP addresses, those accounts that tried to log in. So they use the last command grep into SSH. So you can grep SSH or PTS. PTS stands for pseudo terminal serve, which is indicative of any virtual terminal session. So whether it's SSH or telnet, as long as it's a remote login, it will show with PTS. So the defender has to group last SSH logins, and as you can see here, we were able to filter out one of them, the IP address, the date it occurred, the session, how long it occurred, and whatnot. So the next thing they had to do was to also determine all those unauthorized accounts that were created. And the crucial step to this was to inspect the etc/password file or PASSWD file. So they have to cut it, which essentially brings out the content of the file, then pipe it directly into the tail command, which shows us tail/n, because as the file the file updates in a descending order. So newer accounts are towards the end. So cut it and pipe it to tail, and you're able to see the recent accounts that were made. So from inspecting the output, they can now determine, okay, what those unfamiliar accounts that were created and whatnot. So as a result of the action they took here, they were able to detect those abnormal root logins from those unknown IP addresses and perform immediate credential rotation. That is, change the passwords and whatnot for the accounts and quarantine the host from the network, ensuring that it won't be able to affect other devices connected to the same network. So this daily KPI example is just essentially a task that one will be able to perform in a real world scenario given the understanding of Linux. So in such an instance, one should be able to establish their baseline login frequency, or what is expected on a weekly basis. What number of login attempts are we looking at? If it exceeds the baseline, then it shows that an incident might occur. There's a need to escalate it and whatnot. So moving on to the next lab. The second lab is on text manipulation. So just to summarize the essence of the lab, it essentially introduces us to how to, because it's not only crucial to be able to navigate to Linux, but as you're working in cybersecurity, you're going to deal with a lot of log files, scripts and whatnot. So it's essential to be able to filter through hundreds, thousands of lines of logs and whatnot for those specific information that you're looking for. Teaching us commands like grep, tail, head, awk, sed is crucial to this. Now, put it in the context of this case study. In April 2025, the Defender's SIEM system, which is their System Information and Event Management System, alerted them on a surge of failed SSH login attempts. So a number of times, the attackers tried to log in with invalid credentials multiple times across their production servers in a short window, which is indicative of a brute force attack. So the task they had at hand was to identify all the IP addresses responsible for the attacks. So for failed password, because for every invalid authentication attempt, the entry in the odd.log file. The odd.log file is essentially a system-wide authentication log that keeps track of every authentication attempt across different apps on the system. So they had to grep with the I flag, which is for case insensitive, so that even if the failed is not a capital F but a small f, it will still be outputted, it won't be excluded. So you have to grep for those failed attempts and count the number of attempts. So they pipe it into WCL, which essentially tells Linux that this content that I've grepped here, I want you to count the number of lines. So from that, using a similar command like this, they'll be able to count all the number of attempts. Like, oh, we can see that, okay, 2,000 attempts were made to log in, so and so. So the next thing they had to do, okay, now it's clicking. So the thing they had to do, they first determined how many attempts were made. Then the next thing was to find out the IP addresses, those top IPs with the most attempts. So they had to use a chain pipe command. So with the content of the odd.log file, they had to grep for failed passwords. So all those failed attempts, they had to filter so only those attempts entries will be displayed. Then they had to use awk command to essentially tell the CLI that, hey, we only need the column with the IP address. And from observing that entry, it was the 11th, in the 11th position from the left. So the awk for that column, so it will only print, so instead of printing the full entries with SSH, invalid user root, so and so port, it will only show the IP addresses in each entry. And then they use the sort command to sort it so that all those similar IPs will be together. Unique C to reduce redundancy. So instead of seeing multiple 1.0.0, 1.0.0, we're just streamlined to just one. And the C flag allows you to count for currency. So if you see 1.0.0, 1.0.0, it will just be 1.0.0. Then by the left, you see the number by the left shows the number of times that specific text occurred. So they use that They use the sort and then head to now display the top 10 in a descending order, the top 10 IP addresses with the most attempts. And using a command like this, they will get an output like this that will show them, okay, these are the top IPs that are trying to connect. And they'll be able to take immediate actions against it, using it to update their firewall rules, CRDR blocks, and whatnot. So this daily KPI example is just um, a practical relevant action one will be able to take with the understanding of this in a real world context. So comparing failed login counts every daily. From that, you have an estimate of the number of failed accounts you're expecting on a weekly basis. Oh, in a day, no more than 20 failed login accounts. We see that the spike, there's a sudden spike one of the days that, oh, instead of 20 failed login attempts, we are seeing 15. Something's going on, escalates. So the third lab, searching with find. So it essentially introduced us to, we were able to learn how to use Linux with commands, to navigate through Linux with commands, how to search for specific text. Now it's crucial for us to be able to search for specific files because it is inefficient to search manually for files throughout the system. So teaching us from our understanding and our practice of the labs, we're able to learn how to use the find command to locate commands to efficiently and recursively search for files throughout the entire system. So bringing it to the context of this case study here, we can see that in March 2025, the defenders, their security monitoring detected an unusual file access pattern from internal IP on a web server. So files that shouldn't be accessed by other users were being accessed by them. So it's indicating that they're exposed because their file permissions were too permissive. So their task is to locate those sensitive files and remediate them. And our understanding of the find was applied. So there is the find command, find / which represents the root folder, which is essentially the folder where every single data on your Linux system is under. So essentially telling the find command that search throughout the entire system. We are searching for a file and any file with the permission 777. For understanding of permission, we know that the read, write, and execute permissions can be represented with numbers 4, 2, and 1, where 7 is the highest level of permission. That means you have both read, write, and execute, meaning whoever has that permission can basically do anything with the files. So they have to find all those files with this sort of permissive permissions and then remediate them. So they will not be able to use something like exec to now, okay, for all these files, chmod them, change their permissions and whatnot. So the next thing they also had to do was to search for, they also use grep in their in the etc folder, the folder that contains configuration files, to search for those sensitive system files where crucial information is just being stored plainly without proper protection, where their permissions isn't properly configured properly. So using the grep IRN, telling grep that you search for this string, ignoring case sensitivity, recursively throughout the folder while also showing their line numbers. So through doing that, you're able to find in the etc folder all those files where sensitive information, like for instance, represented there in the picture, password was just left there plainly. So as a result, the defenders in this scenario were able to find out that their backup.conf, their config file wasn't, the permissions weren't restrictive enough and the sensitive data was contained there plainly. So with that, we're able to fix the permission, setting it to something like 600, which essentially means for user, they will have read, which is 4, and write, which is 2. They'll have read and write permissions, but for group and others, they'll have no permissions. So they won't be able to even read. They may be, if they have read permissions in the directory, they may be able to see the name of the file, but for the file itself, they won't be able to display the contents, open the file to edit it or whatnot. So they were able to set the proper permissions for their file with that. So a daily KPI example is running permission audits daily, documenting, checking, going through the file systematically, using something like the find command here to search for files where the permissions are configured properly. Those files that weren't configured properly, document them and remediate them within a short period of time. So the next lab, network services lab, this lab introduces us to crucial in cybersecurity, a crucial part of defense is being familiar with network services, crucial for defense. Services like SSH, SMTP and whatnot. Not only being familiar with how the services work, but also being able to use commands to monitor them, like using the systemctl command, service command to enable, disable, restart services and whatnot. Being able to go to the being able to edit the configuration files for these essential services so as to set or configure them properly for the context they are to be used. So bringing to the context of this use case, we can see that in February 2025, there was the defenders noticed a spike in the SSH brute force login attempts. And they were able to determine that some of the attackers were also able to gain shell access, that is command line access, through a misconfigured service running on port 8080. So their task here was to determine the source, all those IPs responsible for the attacks, and identify any risky or misconfigured network services that could be exploited. So to determine those IPs behind the attacks for these brute force failed login attempts, they will have to inspect the auth.log file, filter for only those failed entries for failed password, which shows failed login attempts, print those IP addresses, sort them, reduce redundancies, rank them according to occurrence, similar to what we have seen previously. From analyzing the auth.log file, we're able to rank those top IPs responsible for the login attempts. And crucial to this was they have to also determine those services that are misconfigured. So they'll use a command which essentially asks T, which tells you that only display those connections, those TCP connections with U, telling that also display UDP connections, A, telling that both connections, regardless of the state, whether it's the active connection, the listening, whatnot, display it, and telling it that instead of showing domain names, resolve them to their IP addresses, and P, telling you to display the process ID. It may not be visible here, but when you use the sudo along with it, you'll be able to see the process ID for the processes of program or services behind each of these connections. So it was 3 years to be able to determine that, oh, and for grepping for listening, we can now see that, okay, from looking at it, you'll see that, oh, what service, these services that are listening, I think the services that, are these services configured properly? This service is not meant to be listening to allow for anybody to connect, stuff like that. So it's through something like this that they'll be able to determine, be able to quickly see all those misconfigured services and take steps to remediate it. So as a result, the defenders in this scenario were able to discover an unauthorized service on port 8080, and they were able to terminate it and set up a firewall to block access to it. So a daily KPI example in this instance is being able to compare the current list of active network ports against the approved baseline. So if your approved baseline is doing that, only the Apache and SSH service should be listening for connections. And when you now use this command, you see that other services too, like FTP and whatnot, are listening. It shows that something's going on, and it allows them to be able to investigate and respond to these instances. So looking at Lab 5 introduced us to Linux permission, which I might have said a bit previously, which essentially allowed us to understand how permissions in Linux works. That essentially there are 2 types of permission. You can have read permission, which enables you to look at the which enables you to see the contents of a file or folder. Write permission, which enables you to edit or modify the contents of a file or folder. And execute permission, which enables you to run a script or a program. So bringing it to the context of this scenario, we can see that in May 2025, defenders were able to determine that the attackers gained read access to their etc shadow file, which is essentially a crucial configuration file that displays the password hashes for the user accounts in the system. So this was very bad. It means that the defenders will be able to, for all the accounts, they'll be able to see all the password hashes, copy them, and if the hashes are not secure, if there's something like MD5 hashes and whatnot, they'll be able to crack it. So that was how crucial the situation was. And their task at hand was to secure those critical system files by applying proper permissions, so as to ensure that only authorized users will have limited access to it. So the action they took, they will, for the etc shadow file, they will have to, after they display the obviously they will know that the permission was not set properly. So they use the chmod command, which essentially tells Linux that, hey, change the permission of this. Whatever permission it was before, change it to this. So they use something like sudo chmod, because you need to use sudo as this is a crucial system file. So sudo chmod 600, telling that for users, give them level 6 permission. They'll have read and write permission. For groups and others, their level of permission is 0. So the other groups and other users will not be able to read, write, or access the shadow file. They use the command similar to how you can see here to change the permission for the shadow file. And crucial to, so as to give their security team or any additional account that may be crucial in this process, they use a command like usermod ag, which essentially uses the usermod command, which tell Linux that we are going to modify the specific user account. And for this instance, we want to add this user to the sudo group and whatnot. So it's using a command like this to be able to give their security team sudo access without having to necessarily change the permissions for their files. So as a result of taking actions like this, they were able to secure their critical files, closing the privilege escalation path, that is disabling the attackers from being able to pivot from there and gain more elevated permissions to other crucial files, and perform a full audit to correct the permissions to all the sensitive files. So a daily KPI action in this instance is being able to verify the permissions for your crucial system files like the shadow file, sudoers file, and from inspecting them, being able to flag for unauthorized changes and take actions in that regard. So in the lab 6, the bash scripting lab 6 bash scripting. So essentially, in this unit of the Linux program, we were taught on how to use bash scripts, write scripts that enable us to automate crucial cybersecurity tasks. So instead of having to manually check for your IP, having to manually type root, this and that, creating pipes like each time you have to check for your IP, or each time you have to check for your default gateway, or perform some crucial vulnerability scanning or whatnot, we can just use scripts to automate it. So all the commands we need, we write it as once in a script, and we can run them. We can, instead of having to type the command each time you need it, we only need to just call for the script and it do it automatically for us. So bringing to the context of this scenario, we can see that the situation at hand was that their log files, the security team noticed that their response time to brute force attempts was slow because they were manually checking their log files. So if a brute force SSH attack occurs, it could go unnoticed for up to like 4 hours, which is a very bad situation, as speed is of essence when dealing with attacks in cybersecurity. So their task at hand was to create an automated way for them to attempt to detect brute force SSH attempts quickly and consistently. And they made use of something like bash scripts to that effect. So they'll write the command needed to detect for the top IP addresses with failed login attempts. They'll use a similar command to this, like we have seen previously, grep for all those failed login entries, print only the IP address column, sort for redundancies, rank it according to in a descending order, such that the IP address with the top, with the most number of login attempts will be at the top, and then use the head to display the top 10. So they put a command like this into a script, and they then modified the permission of the script, because usually by default when you create scripts, it usually we just read and write permission. It's not unless you set it the default permission in the folder. maybe with ACL or something, to give execute permission for all the files in the folder. By default, you don't usually have execute permission when you create script. So it's crucial to be able to it's crucial for them to use a command like chmod +x to grant execute level of permission to the scripts. And then they now run the script and it will now give them a similar output of this. So, and as a result of this, they were able to see that their daily log analysis became much more efficient. It became automatic and the detection time was much faster. So instead of detecting an attack hours after it occurred, they were able to detect it in just minutes. So, and like you can see at the end, the daily KPI example, which one will be able to perform with mastery of this, is being able to schedule a script to run automatically using the cron command. And based on the output of it, if it detects suspicious IPs, flag it and escalate it for investigation. So moving on to the last lab here, we have the TR command, the translate command. And summarizing the learnings from this, in essence, because from our understanding of text manipulation, we introduced to commands like awk, sed, which allows us to manipulate text at a pattern or group level. But when we need to manipulate text at a character level, we use the TR command. And bringing to the context of this use case, we can see that in July 2025, during a multi-cloud security incident, their investigation log shows that the usernames were in inconsistent formats. It wasn't consistent. You're having things like instead of there being a clear like for instance, instead of usernames all being in lowercase, they're in uppercase, duplicates of IP address and whatnot. And it's crucial for them to be able to correct this because this can it's inconsistency like this that can interfere with their monitoring systems in place and whatnot. So the task they had at hand was to clean and standardize their forensic data such that everything is in a set format or in a set format or pattern. So they use the TR command. So as you can see here in the action, the cat was used to bring out the content of the user.txt file. This is an example of how they'll be able to standardize their forensic data. Then they now pipe it to the TR command, which is essentially saying that, for all the text, for all the content in this file, for every lowercase alphabet. So detect all the lowercase alphabets. Every single lowercase alphabet, substitute it with their uppercase alternative, if I'll call it. So they're able to run a command like this, to substitute the cases for their alphabet, squeeze excessive punctuation, where needed, remove it with complements and delete flags and whatnot. And is when their log is consistent that they'll be able to now properly run pipe commands like, for instance, cat.log to now display those IPs and without duplicates and whatnot. So as a result of this, it made their data was cleaned, which made it easier for them to be able to match events and detect it across their system. So it vastly reduced errors in analysis and helped them to identify attacker patterns better across their different environments. So a daily KPI example one should be able to perform in their mastery of this is being able to use the TR command, that's the translate command, and up when needed to clean log files before analysis, so as to reduce errors and ensure consistencies out. So moving on to the next slide. So in principle, from engaging with all the labs and all the materials in this Linux program, I was able to change my thinking patterns to think not just like an attack, to think like an attacker. Because it's when you know your enemy, like that say, know your enemy. When you know your enemy, that you'll be able to, you've won the war. You'll be able to take proper steps or mitigation against them. So when you're able to think like an attacker, you know their behavior patterns, what they're likely to do, and you'll be able to now defend them professionally and thwart their attacks. So being able to break all these attacks, a complex incident, being able to break it into stages or steps so as to ensure that we can systematically apply the correct defenses where they are needed, and being able to automate this using bash scripts and whatnot. So, and we can see that all these learnings are crucial. They're not just isolated or for theory's sake. They're also crucial in real-world cybersecurity roles like SOC analysis, because they will use Linux commands like cat, grep, and whatnot to be able to monitor their log files, investigate for what would I call it? Investigate for unusual activity or pattern. Pen testers, they'll find it crucial to use tools like find or grep to source for misconfiguration, scan for network services and whatnot. And automation is also crucial across every single cybersecurity role, as it's foundational to be able to be efficient in your defense actions. So in summary, Linux is having an understanding of Linux, a comprehensive understanding of Linux fundamental is crucial for cyber security. And Think Cyber Labs have given us a hands-on experience to be able to connect these tools and commands with actual relevant cybersecurity jobs. So thank you. That is the end of my presentation. Should I stop sharing my
Okay,
screen?
all right, that's fine. Let's move to question and answer session. Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Explain 2 ways to display the size of a file.
Okay. What do you say?
Explain 2
This is
ways.
what tools are you?
Explain
Okay,
2
2
ways to
ways.
display the size of a file.
Okay. So for understanding of Linux command, we know that when we use the ls command, ls with the L flag, which essentially tells you that display it in full, display not just the file name, but the full permissions and whatnot, and H for readable format. It shows us the permissions, the owner, whatnot, and also the size of the file. So as you can see here, for all the files in my desktop folder, we can see the sizes here. This is 115 bytes. This is 4 kilobytes. These directories are 4 kilobytes, 4 kilobytes, and whatnot. So ls with L flag is one way to check for file size. Another way is using the du command. The du misses for this is it checks for the space that files take up in a directory. So du with H flag makes sure that the sizes are in a human readable format. So when we use this, we can see the sizes of all the directories in this folder. So if you are checking for size of file or directory, you can use the du command or you can use the ls command.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Just to the next question. Explain the different flags, -L, -W, -C of the WC command.
So let me use a file for an example. Let me just explain it. So the WC command, when we run it by default, it shows us the number of lines, number of words, and number of characters in the file. So when we use the L
It's
flag,
better you
it shows
actually
us the number
explain
of,
it. Hello, can you hear me? Explain it using a
yeah.
data, a
Okay,
file
let
with
me
data.
check for it. Let me use the one that's, which one do I use? Let me use project. Let me use this. So I'll navigate to launch. So if you use the WCL flag, it shows us the number of lines in this file. So this shows that there are 296 lines. So if you use the WC with W flag, it shows us the number of words in this file. And it shows us that there are 640 words in this project 1.sh file. And if you use the WC with C flag, it shows us the number of characters. So from alphabets to numbers to spaces to punctuation marks, it shows us the number of characters in total in this file. And you can see that there are 6,759 characters in this particular file. So that's how to use the different flags for the WC
How do you
command.
display the system's uptime?
So, 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 So you want to display uptime, use the uptime command. This shows how for how long as this minutes and 42 seconds. And I can also show you the average load on the system. But to display the uptime, how long the system has been running, use the uptime command, and this shows for how long the system has been running.
So how do you start, stop, and restart? Check the status of a service. Use a service to demonstrate. Use a particular service to
So
demonstrate
I'll
that.
be using SSH. I'll be using the SSH service to demonstrate. So to check the status of a service, you can use the service command, service SSH status. You can use the service command, you can use systemctl, starts SSH. You can use systemctl to start a service. You can use if you check the status of it, you see that it started. So you want to enable a to stop a service, stop SSH. So when we display the status of it, we can see that it has been stopped. So it's now inactive. So if you want to enable a service, we can use, in this case, it's enable. So if you want to disable a service, we can use SSH. So when we now check the status of it, we can see that it's been disabled. So that's how you use different services to check the status of different commands to check the status of the service, start it, stop it, enable it, and open it.
Where can you find all the system log files? What part of the Linux?
So from understanding of so we have to navigate to the var log folder. This folder, this var/log folder, it holds all the log files across the different services and applications on the system.
Yeah.
So in the var/log is where you can find system log files.
All right, I think that's all. Do you have any question for me?
Yeah, sure. Okay. My name is Swada Lopa. I'm a RAN engineer at Huawei Technology, and I'm going to give a defense on the Linux fundamental model. So the defense, this defense is going to demonstrate how Linux fundamental relates with real-world cybersecurity operations and how they are applied using STAR methodology. So, yeah. The overview of this defense, which it shows like the understanding of Linux fundamental and for cybersecurity defense, and it also shows how the lab from on Think Cyber has prepared an analyst for real-world incidents. Now, I'm going to apply the lab skills that we learned to real-world cybersecurity scenarios and also map each of the lab, the outcome of each lab to industry roles like SOC analyst, pen tester, and incident responder. So the daily KPI is to verify the daily iteration of open source threat fit, and if any common vulnerability affects the environment, we document and escalate within the incident response plan. The first lab was Linux command, and this is like basically for system and network management. So there was a case in January 2025 that was reported by Cyberwire, where a Linux server targeted a Linux server was targeted by SSH credential stuffing attacks and exploited outdated monitoring tools. Now, we needed to identify compromised accounts and also unauthorized user creation. So the command last was used to get recent users that were added, and also the grep PTS in this case was just used to check for SSH logins, basically in this case. And then also we used the cat etc password to display all system users, and then the tail -n 5 shows like the 5 last entries that was the 5 last entries that was entered, and this helps us to detect any newly added accounts or suspicious activities on the account. So the result was that an abnormal route was detected from an unknown IP. So the host was quarantined, and also credentials were rotated. That is, any passwords that has been exposed were changed. Whenever there's an abnormal SSH activities that exceeds 30%, then it triggers an incident escalation. Then the second lab is text manipulation. So text manipulation is necessary for log analysis and for incident response. So the CyberWire use case was in April of 2025, where there was a surge in brute force SSH attempts that was targeting a cloud Linux node. So there were multiple failed SSH logins that was flagged by the SIEM, the same across production system. Now we needed to identify the source IPs of the brute force attempt. So we used, in the case of what we had learned in text manipulation, we used the grep command, strings of commands, specific strings from a list of file or any document. So we use the grep -I, which is to make sure that the grep -I is just to show like specifically any format. So we grep the field password in the auth-log file, which is in the varlog directory, and then it counted the number of field attempts that we had gotten. And then for the second command, which can be seen here, we cast the auth-log file, and then we grep any field password that were there, and then got the IP addresses. So the IP addresses were sorted numerically, and then we got the last 10, the top 10 IPs that occurred like frequently. So they discovered top 5 hacking IPs, and which was blocked via the firewall, and they updated the fail to ban configuration. Now for the daily KPI, it's just to compare the failed login counts daily. So if there's a spike above 50% from the baseline, so you have to log and then escalate for investigation. The third lab was on searching with find, and it's used to detect any misconfigurations. So in March of 2025, there was a misconfigured permissions that exposed sensitive config files, and it enabled lateral movement in the Linux clusters. And the suspicious data were exposed on web servers due to these misconfigured permissions. Now we needed to locate and then change the exposed sensitive files and permission. The first thing to do was we used find to find any file that has 777 permission, which is also known as the word writable permission, because they are at security risk. Then we also use the grep command, the grep IRN, to search recursively through the etc directory for any files containing the string password. So in this case, the use of this command was to be able to get those list of commands and see if any password has been compromised or exposed, so you can change those credentials. So then they found word writable config file in the etc backup.config, and then the permissions were corrected, and then credentials was also changed. So the daily KPI is to run permissions audits daily and document and remediate any exposure within 24 hours. Now for the fourth lab, we discussed the network services, and this is for monitoring and securing services. So on February of 2025, Attackers leveraged exposed SSH and telnet ports for persistent access. We needed to elevate. They were elevated brute force attempts on port 22. So we needed to identify any source IP and any active network services. For this case, we use this. The first command was just to get the list of top IPs that tried to access those ports, the open ports, and then we use the netstats TULNP to get the list of active services, and then we grep listen, that is to check ones that the ports that were still active and are in their listening state. So for the results, we detected unapproved services that were running on port 880. These processes they were terminated, and then the firewall policy was updated. For the daily KPI, we needed to compare the daily activities on the network ports for any baseline, and then flag any new unknown services, and then they will be investigated. Number 5, Linux permissions, and there is basically securing any privileged files. On May 2025, in a case reported by CyberWire, there was a mismanaged Linux permission which enabled privilege escalation in financial sectors. Now, for the situation, they were unauthorized access. They gained unauthorized access into the ETC shadow. The shadow file, and then we needed to add in the system permission to enforce at least privilege. So first, we used the sudo chmod 600, that is, we set the permission for the shadow file to 600 so that only root users can read or write the file, so that the hash password in those files are protected. For the other parts, the sudo user mode -ag sudo security admin basically adds the security admin to the sudo group, which gives it administration permissions. Now, the result was that any critical file was secured, and the privilege escalation was minimized, or it was mitigated. So for daily KPI, we have to verify that the permissions for the ETC shadow and ETC sudo has remained secure, and then any unauthorized changes should be flagged. Okay, so for bash scripting, but when bash scripting is mainly for automating threat detections. So on June 2025, the security teams automated with false detection scripts to improve response time. So the task here was to automate the detection of any SSH brute force attempts. So we used the bash script. We made a bash script to automate this process. So here you can see the shebang being, it tells that this script should be run with bash shell, and then for this line tells the grep field password for invalid users, just basically greps like any new any attempts that were made to the system that had been stored in the var log directory, and then you get the top 10 IPs that made the most attempts. So that's what is the bash scripting also. So the script automated cut the detection time by 70%, which makes the analysis process easier and then faster. Then the daily KPI is to schedule discrete VICON, and if there's any detected IP count that exceeds the particular set threshold, should be alerted, should be escalated and then alerted. For the TR command, TR is data transformation, and it's used in forensics to investigate to clean logs or any files. So in the July of 2025, analysts needed to normalize forensic data across multi-cloud Linux system. So we needed to standardize and clean the extracted forensic data. And first of all, in this example, the cat what2 list.txt first was to cut the file and then transform the contents of the file from lowercase to uppercase. That is, transform any small lowercase letters to uppercase letter. So this standardizes like the old text. For the cat alt.log, this basically sorts the file, then prints like a particular field, which is like the fields that contains the IP, the sorts and removes any redundant or any duplicates information in the list of the files. So now we have a clean data set and then improved log correlation and also reduced any passing error. The daily KPI is to use TR and OC daily to sanitize any logs before analysis and to investigate any formatting anomalies. Now, the key takeaways from this is that because I'm going to talk about the core principles to think like an attacker and defend like a pro, and also apply the cyber chain to anticipate and disrupt any attacker behavior. So for each of the skills, for mapping each of the skills to a particular role, for SOC analysts, they are usually for log monitoring and incident triage, and they would use tools. In this case, we use tools like rep, org, tail, and system to monitor real-time logs and identify any anomalies before they are being acted on by attackers, and also for us to be able to escalate any incidents quickly. For penetration testers, they specialize in misconfiguration, discovery, and exploitation testing, and the skills like find, chmod, and like network utilities like Netstat, Nmap to uncover any system weakness. For the incident responder, they will leverage command line skills to trace attack footprints and analyze logs properly. So at Think Cyber, you're not just learning, you're defending digital frontier. And for here, you have to consolidate a daily metrics. So if an anomaly persists, you activate the documented response plan, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Explain 2 ways to display the size of a file.
Okay, so the size of a file can be displayed using ls-lh. So
demonstrate it on the Kali link.
Sorry. Okay. I'm going to that. I'll be using the auto.log as an example. So I think knowledge log. So here it tells us. So this is the size of the file. So this is 4 megabytes. This is the size in bytes. The -h allows it to allows it to show in human readable form. So
okay,
and then the other is sir?
Second method.
Yeah, I want to try. I want to be sure. Okay, yes. Also the start command also shows. So I'm going to use the same start image. Am I wrong? I think it's just starts. Okay, so this is the size of the file. Just a moment. This is the size. Here it shows the size of the file here. So that's basically the same thing as this above. So same thing as the size that was shown here also, but this is just in bytes.
Okay, all right. Explain with different flags, the different flags, -L, -W, -C, the WC command.
Okay, so should I demonstrate it on Kali?
Yeah, you
That's
should.
just okay. So the WC-L shows like the line in the file. The number of lines in the file. So I'm going to do cat log. So this gives us the number of lines in log. Then when I cat log, but then -C, this is to get the number of characters in the file. So -C tells us that they have 4,100 and I don't know 4 million. In fact, yeah, 4,125,934 characters. Then for hyphen L line the number here. So let's see. What? So Miss, can you tell me the last one is LCL?
Sorry?
The hyphen I'm to explain hyphen L, hyphen C.
-L, -W, and -C.
Okay, so for hyphen W just tells us the amount of the number, the amount of words in the file. So there are four, I don't know, okay, so 491 1,533 words, and there are 4,125,934 characters, and then you have 34,979 lines in the file, in the log file.
Okay, all right, that's fine. How do you display the system uptime?
Okay, using the command uptime.
Okay.
So it tells us that the system has been up for 9 hours 46 minutes 38 seconds up. Wait, load average and then the number of users that has been logged in.
Sorry, just 1 minute. -3. What output is shown when you use the free -H command?
It shows the memory usage and the space, the amount of space used, and also the amount of memory used, and also the space. So, yeah, finish. And then it gives it in a human readable format. So here, the -H is to give it in human readable. So this is the
Human
total
readable.
memory used format. Like the -H that gives, like if I was to use, I don't know if sorry, so free just gives it like in bytes. So the
Okay,
-H allows it to be like
how do you start, stop, and restart a service so that we wrap this up? I have some other things to do.
okay. Using the sudo let me see SSH. Okay, so to start, we use the sudo systemctl start SSH. Then to stop, I don't stop the same thing. Use the same command, but just replace this with the stop. Okay, so then okay, I'm going to start it again just to check the status. Okay, so sudo So it tells us that the service is active and running. So to stop it, use the same command, but just change the status to stop. This is stopped. And when I check the status, it tells us that the service is inactive. Dead since just that.
Okay, all right, that's all. Do you have any question for me? You are more lively here than when you are presenting. I think you need to work on your presentation skill. The other two people are actually
No.
very good in presentation. Have you gone for any job interview before?
I only one actually, which was Huawei's interview. Was the one I'd gone for.
You need to be able, because we're still growing. I think you have about Python. You have 5 more modules to do amidst other presentations you'll be doing as you grow your muscles. You are not actually fully engaging the audience when you talk. You understand? So we're not doing this. The next one might not be me. You understand? How much did you pay for this training? The $1,500 is a lot of money. So every part of your skills and your canon of your arsenal needs to be built to ensure that you you have the right foundation to grow to become a titan. What you're doing is basic. You understand now, but you are laying the proper. We're actually ensuring that you're laying the proper foundation of where you're going to. So, lastly, when you come out and tell people you graduate with a first class, they actually have a lot of expectation on your performance. So immediately, if it's falling below expectation, they start rating you down. So ensure you are actually dotting anytime you come out to talk. So people always have high expectation on your performance. So when it meets below, when it starts falling below expectation, they will start grading you low. So what it's
do you have any like tips on how I can improve? Naturally, as I said the last time, I would say that maybe it was because I'm usually tensed and I probably don't even realize that.
What you do is this, and what you do is they call it skimming scanning. You do the presentation, you read it the first time, you go again, read it the second time, then you now actually do first part, record yourself, then see the way it is, then work on it. If you do that 1 week, 2 weeks, you will improve on your presentation skill. However, I think I shared some information on how you can improve so that you how to engage your audience in a technical presentation. You don't need to look too far. We are in the era of AI. So technical presentation. So once you type that, it tells you a lot of clues on how you should be able to actually engage your audience. You communicate the salient points. In this presentation, most of you did not talk about what you learned. I just let it slide. Okay, this guy's stuff is back. So here. So there's a lot of noise in the industry. Why I don't want to actually talk about that today, you understand? So we've spent almost 2 decades moving from one multinational to another multinational. So when we look at people who are ranting from their academia, we just look at them and laugh. You understand? So if you've been doing world-class projects how I put it, for multinational, you see? So it took him about 15 years to be able to build that. So this is the first company we worked. I think I started about this time. Lightning Network. This is a contractor. Are they still in Huawei there?
What's that?
This company is a Huawei contractor. They are the one, they contract you to them to work for Huawei. Lightning Network. Are they still in Huawei there? Before?
I've not heard of them before.
Eh?
I don't think I've heard of them before.
Okay. Normally when Huawei wants to employ you, they don't employ you direct. It's always a contract, renewable contract. So they bring in a contractor. You'll be using Huawei email, but Huawei is dealing with a contractor. One of the contractors is Lightning Network. So you would have been on that platform before you now come to Huawei mainstream. That's why you see that it's a rigorous process to say you are an Huawei staff, because they want to test if you actually already have all the capabilities. If you come down, you see that there are other experience. That's why I'm actually guiding you right. So, are you saying so? Okay, these ones are not Huawei. So this Lightning Network.
And I also have a question. Like, I need your opinion on them. Okay, so I'll be done with my NYC by December, and I will be retained.
This December.
Not retained, sir.
This December.
Yes, this December.
Okay.
So there's possibility that I'll be retained, but like retained as an outsource, because
no, we are using the language. I'm trying to tell you what they do. You are telling me you don't know. They call them outsource staff.
Oh.
So that outsource staff, this is who you're going to be. This is person that will pay your salary. Lightning Network.
Oh, yeah.
So this is okay. I'm not with mine. Okay, mine was Rutotech. It's from Rutotech. They now handed me over to Lightning Network. You understand? However, during that process, they expect you to master. That's why I told you, you've not started doing cooperation. You will be trained and you master all. They will now test you. They do monthly tests. Now, if you get A, you are right. B, you get C 2 times, you are off the contract. So it's a continuous development so that you are up on your feet and you have what a line manager you report to. Are you getting it?
Yes.
Good. So now, before you look at the time you came in, this is 2010, look at the time you became a manager. 2024. How many years is that? I don't know at what point in time you became a manager, but he left 2024. This at 2019, it was not a manager. That's 9 years. So I'm just trying to build so that you can see. They say there are many routes to the market on Okon Waja. You get it clearly. Now, mobile telecom is no longer an emerging technology. So in case you want to look, Shego Dusonga.
Okay, so the question that I was going to ask was that, do you think my concern now is that I don't know if right now if I should still like take the outsource while I'm still
a bed at hand is what 50 in the bush. A bed at hand is what 70 in the bush. You are more valuable to employers when you are in an industry than when you are coming from home. Where is she coming from? She's coming from Huawei.
Okay.
I hope you get it. So you will now be able to prioritize you have to be able to prioritize your time to ensure that you give attention to this, because you know you want to cross over to cybersecurity.
Yeah, that's the problem. Already now, like even as like the NYS I'm doing, like the job is already, the work we are giving is already like very tasking, because the work they give, they expect us to work like they're like a normal staff. So we do like
you don't need to tell me about Huawei.
Yeah. So the
person you are seeing, the person you are seeing is our national. This person you are seeing was our national director across Nigeria and West Africa. You see, as of today, it's no longer in mobile telecoms.
Yes, sir.
It's not in the countries in the United States. Come back here. I'm just trying to actually guide you that you should have prioritized your plans very well. Are you saying? So he left 2016, Huawei Technology. If you go, he was the one who actually is the head of RF resource across Nigeria and as a part of West African project. So if they are to employ you into RF on all operations of Huawei with MTN, Globalcom, he's the one who decides it. I think there is Shego Nikwe. Let me see that Shego Nikwe is still there. That was in the last decade. In this decade, that's Shego Nikwe. I'm not sure if Shego. I'm just trying to tell you what happened and how everybody moved on. Is he still working for them? Where is he? He's in Australia. Is that in mobile telecoms? Oh, so that's that. So you understand? It's a training, it's a grant to build. What you will get from Huawei is a work culture. Are you saying that's RF, radio frequency? There was one Shegun Nipe we met there. Eso Meme. What was that? Eso Meme. Eso Meme. So you see, I left all of them in that place, went off to do something else, and I'm sure the most of them were always surprised. And how this guy leaves cybersecurity and mobile telecoms and is doing, because there's always a switching cost when you are changing profession. So when I saw these guys rant when academia said I can do this, I can, it's not a bunch of noise. Look at the projects we did. They are all world-class war projects. Huawei swapping out Ericsson, Ericsson swapping out Nokia Siemens. These are all big global brands who are competing for $1 million contracts in what with the operators. So a lot, you bring in expert hands from all around the world. Are you saying this first project was Ericsson to Huawei swap, Nokia Siemens to Huawei swap, then what? Network performance management project. There are a lot of good experience. I'm trying to remember the name. It's Islam. Forgotten all those guys. So Yasa Amin. Let me see from Yasa Amin. I should be able to. Yasa Amin. Okay. So this is the person I was reporting to in my project. He's in Australia. He works for Ericsson. You understand? So the light-colored guys are more favored because you understand they can move around the world. You make more money moving around. He's in Australia. So are you saying he left as RF lead, network performance manager? So this is the person I was reporting to, 2011. Come down. Are you hearing it? So you see, we've done world-class projects. And so before then, while they chose him, he had worked on Nokia Siemens for Nokia Siemens and was swapping out to Nokia Siemens. So HRs are not, most importantly, Huawei HRs are not stupid. They get the best of brains to actually build, and they make the work culture to manage costs. They tend to replace, how will I put it? They tend to replace foreigners with Nigerian bright brains, and they pay them peanuts. So, but it's more juicy in cybersecurity. Even at home, the banks pay very well, more than Huawei.
Yeah.
Good. That's cybersecurity. Now talk abroad. They pay it's hot cake. The demand, you can't compare market demand in cybersecurity to market demand in mobile telecom. These are drops. So finally, let me just tell you this. For international projects in cybersecurity, it's Tangent International. They're in United Kingdom. They don't pay much. It's $2,000 now for international projects. So these are the people you register with if you know you are good and you want them to actually get jobs for you internationally. So it's Tangent International. So you see that we have actually traversed that space. And one of the I didn't tell you about what do they call it? Proper communication, you understand? Because most of the time, being an outsourced staff, if they want to get international job, they go back to the mainstream supervisor and ask for his recommendation.
Okay.
Even after your performance for interview. So that is why they do not take me, because we had fallouts. You understand? Good. So that's that. If I would advise you, stay on your job, prioritize your time, grow exceedingly capability in cybersecurity. You will need it so that you plan 1.5, 1 year, 1.5 with mob run, then then you exit to what? The cybersecurity profession. You are still a very young girl. You could actually start from tier 1 or tier 2.
Okay. What if I find let's say an entry role right now, maybe like in a maybe a cybersecurity company, or maybe or a
What cybersecurity
role,
company?
sorry, like a cybersecurity role rather.
A cybersecurity role in Huawei.
Not Huawei.
A cybersecurity role in a bank, fine, good. That's a good one. Yeah,
Okay.
cybersecurity role in a bank is a good one. Your first job actually plays a lot of role in your career shoot.
Okay.
Your first job plays a lot of role in your career. I think I'm actually out of